let's start recording. So a couple of things I do want to share. Again, chat gets recorded and timestamped, but that means if I'm putting links, they're now going to be in the recording as well. So some of the things, as I said, I'm not going to be able to cover, like assignments, tests. You might want to check out this media wiki, though. It's got a lot of helpful articles and links out to videos about many of the issues you might be interested in. So very useful resource right there. And as you're seeing, the links in the chat are also clickable. So that's a nice feature. And someone had asked about what to do if they're getting the purple circle. And this might be something you or a student, I'll show you in a second, when you're trying to join through the actual course site, you should be able to just see the course room. If not, and you're getting a purple circle, it's likely a cookies issue. It's likely your browser's blocking cookies. First things first, I strongly recommend using Chrome. Chrome will solve so many problems. Have you and the students use Chrome, and then if you are experiencing this trouble, use this information I'm about to post in the chat. Will hopefully get that purple circle problem going away. So hopefully that'll help. And then finally, someone was asking about the internet requirements, headphone requirements. I'll try to talk about things like that as we go, some tips and tricks for what you might want to do to improve your experience. But you also might want to check out the general IT website that talks about the minimum system requirements. And again, I will post that link in the chat right now. It might be a useful thing for you and your students, again, some ideas of the minimum requirements that the university tends to recommend. But let's start looking at how you're going to use the virtual classroom. And likely the very first thing you need to be able to do is get into the virtual classroom. So I'm going to share my screen and we're going to walk through that together. Again, I am going to be monitoring the chat throughout, so please do not hesitate. Throw any comments, questions in there. And again, you can make a bookmarking system for you and the others if you want. So for most people, you're going to be accessing the virtual classroom through a course site. Well, by default, the virtual classroom should be a menu item on each course. It's possible that sometimes every year, one course might not have added. For some bizarre reason, there might be a glitch in the system when it exports the sites, maybe one of the virtual classroom, or maybe someone accidentally deleted it. Maybe someone went in and deleted that link. Well, we can add it back in. So what you want to do is make sure the edit mode is on. And as the edit mode is on, you should see a plus symbol near the top left of your menu. If that's the case, you click the plus symbol and you go down to Tool Link. Blackboard Collaborate Ultra, also known as the virtual classroom, is a tool we can use to meet with our students. So Tool Link, and what we want to do is under Type, find Blackboard Collaborate Ultra. Again, that's the official name. Most of us just call it virtual classroom because it is more intuitive. You can now call it whatever you want on your menu. I'd recommend calling it something obvious and logical. Probably don't want to call it Blackboard Collaborate Ultra because a lot of students won't know what that is. However, you call it something like virtual classroom if you're going to use it for teaching. Most people know what that means intuitively. If you're going to use it for office hours, maybe call it virtual office hours. Last thing I want to do is make sure it's going to be available to users. Once I click submit, it'll show up on my menu as an item they can go into. If I want, I can move it around. And now, you can see I actually already had the virtual classroom on there. If I want, I can add it more than once. I don't really know why you do so. When you click into it, it'll all lead to the same page. So I'm not sure there'd be much of a point to ever add it more than once, but you could if you needed to or wanted to for some good pedagogical reason. Now, if you're going to use the virtual classroom, you might want to consider adding the tutorial. Yes, I will talk about that in a moment. There could be use cases, but I'll definitely talk about the way you can have multiple rooms if you need to. So you might want to add the tutorial. Hopefully, again, this is already a menu item on your course. But if not, you're going to go to the Get Help tab in Blackboard. And I'm going to open mine in a new tab. So I'm going to scroll down along the right-hand side of the Get Help tab, and there's things saying, are you using the virtual classroom? Well, if so, you can download this zip file and then follow the instructions here to import to your site. Again, hopefully it's already on your site, but if not, this will allow you to add it. You can see there's screenshots to walk you through the process, and ultimately it would be a menu item on your site. I'll show you roughly how it looks like. You can feel free to modify this to suit your needs. Hopefully it will fit most people's needs. I mean, obviously, if you made the link something like virtual office hours, you might want to call it virtual office hours tutorial, both here and here. But otherwise, hopefully it'll fit. It's nothing overly fancy, just as a page saying what it is, 2 videos, one that would show the students how to get in a room, how to access recordings if there are any, and another that would talk about how to set up your audio and video, how to use chat, things of that nature. I think that one's about 3 minutes, this one's about 4 minutes, and that should orient your students to being able to use the virtual space. So hopefully that would solve a lot of the problem solving you might have to do. There's also a best practices page, some advice on if they need help, things of that nature. Along that front, one of the best problem-solving things you can do is tell your students to use Chrome. Each site will have a course room. Each person doesn't have their own unique one. So if an instructor and a TA are in the same course, they would see the same room. Again, in a second, I'll show you how you can make alternate rooms if you need them, but you should all be seeing the same room. So again, I can't emphasize enough, get yourself and the students using Chrome. I've been helping problem solve classroom for about 5 years now, and most of the problem solving I do involves me asking someone, are you using Chrome? No, could you switch over to it? Solves 90-some-odd% of the problems. So using Chrome is your best bet. Now, I will note that the virtual classroom is mobile friendly. So someone logging in on an iPad actually can only join on Safari or the app. An iPhone, you can only use the app. An Android device, you can use either the app or a browser, which in that case you want to use Chrome. Anything else like a laptop, desktop, you'd want to log in using Chrome. So again, solves a lot of problems. Let's start looking at the space though. First things first, let's say you record a session. And I'll show you, of course, how to do that later, but if you do a session, the nice thing is it will appear in Blackboard as well. Generally, if a TA is a TA in the Blackboard site, you should have moderator access when you go into the virtual classroom. You might want to test that out on the site you're on. Just go into the virtual classroom, the course room, which I'll show you how to do in a sec, and check if you're a moderator. Should be as long as you're a TA role. If you're added as a student for some bizarre reason, then you'd be added, going in as a participant like you are today, but otherwise you should be added as a moderator automatically. But let's say you record a session. What will happen is the recording should automatically appear in the Blackboard site, and usually it should appear in about as long as the recording is. So what do I mean? Let's say you make a 2-hour recording. Well, in 2 hours, it should appear on the Blackboard site. That being said, I normally recommend telling students it should be there within 24 hours. Because let's say there's a ton of people using a virtual classroom all at once, and for some reason the recording gets a little delayed. You don't want to get a bunch of emails being like, oh, it's not there in the time you said it would be. It should be there within 24 hours, very, very, very safe. If it's ever not, something must have gone wrong. You'd want to submit a ticket. And if you or a student ever does have a problem with the virtual classroom, the best area to get support is to have them submit a ticket. My apologies, too much talking. But you can submit a ticket. That way, whoever's available first will answer the ticket and help out. So you can submit a ticket right here. This will jump to the Blackboard specific tickets, so it would hopefully jump a couple steps. But you or a student would want to submit a ticket here if you're having trouble. But you record a session. The way to access that is by clicking the 3 horizontal lines near the top left. That'll open up your menu. Within the menu, there's a recordings area that I can click into, and it will list the recordings I've made. Now, by default, it only shows the last 30 days. So some people get confused saying my recordings have disappeared. If that's ever the case, what you want to do is instead of filtering by recent recordings up here, you're instead going to say recordings in a range and specify the range you want to look at. Maybe the past several months worth of recordings, and it will appear. There's a number of things I can do to these recordings. If I click the 3 horizontal lines to the right of the recording I'm interested in, I will get a submenu. One thing I can do is watch now. So I could watch the recording and it will open in a new window. I can download the recording, and now this is available to instructors. The students don't have that access. It might depend on how you're at it. If you're a TA, how you're at it, if you have that option. But by default, instructors can always download. If you want a student to download, you have to enable that, and I'll show you how to do that a little bit later. Recording settings. This is the least appropriate name of anything in this area, because when I click into recording settings, what it lets me do is change the name after the slash. I don't know why they call it recording settings, but they do. So if I want to, I can change the name after the slash to something more logical, like say week 1 or whatever the topic is. And if I make multiple recordings, I might call it part 1 and part 2. Because if I start a recording and then stop it midway through a session, maybe for a break, and then start a recording, it doesn't pause it, it makes 2 separate recordings. So being able to call it part 1, part 2 might be helpful. And you can see there is the date and time given, so it should be pretty obvious. I can also delete a recording. So you have to be a little careful with this. It's a permanent delete. You can't get this back. So be very careful if you're going to delete something. I can also copy a link. Maybe I had a guest speaker come to the course site and I want to share the recording with them. This is something I could send to somebody outside of the Blackboard site and they would actually be able to watch it, even if they don't have access to Blackboard. I can also use it to share a recording with a different section, let's say. Now I'm going to actually click this one because also there's the option to add a captioning source. Unfortunately, the virtual classroom doesn't automatically caption any video. If you need to get captions, you'd have to download the recording and say upload it to something like Stream to get the caption file. If there's interest, maybe at the end I can show how to do that. But by default, it won't automatically caption your videos, unfortunately. Great. Let's go back to the main area, which I can do by clicking that 3 horizontal lines and going to sessions, or just clicking the menu item again. Stream. That's within Office 365. You could use that to caption your video. Again, I'll show that at the end of the session maybe, just because there might be some interest in that. Great. So this is a virtual classroom space. When you first click in, this is where someone might get that purple circle. Someone was asking earlier, they might see a purple circle here. Most people won't. That means there's something wrong. Hopefully you're never going to see the purple circle, but if you do or a student does, that's where you're going to follow those cookie instructions I put above. It's blocking the right cookies from basically, it's not allowing it to access it. So that would be the way to solve it. Get them to use Chrome. If they're still having problems, go use that instructions I put in there. Again, it might be that you just get them to submit a ticket and someone will help them. So every site has a course room. This is for the entire site, not specific to either the TA, the instructor, or anything else. There's a course room that's always there and always open unless you choose to lock it. And you can lock it by clicking into it and choosing the lock course room. So kind of like a regular classroom. If you wanted to, you could lock it behind you so people can't go in when you're not in there. And then let's say you come back the next day and are ready to use it again. You click in and choose to unlock the course room. And now you and the students can go back in. Course room, again, always there unless you lock it. You can also create a session. A session, when I go into it, I get to call it whatever I want. I can enable guest access, which we'll talk about more in a second. And I get to choose the start and end time. And if it repeats. So maybe I want to have the same session every Tuesday and Thursday for either 10 times, or more likely you might want to specify an end date. I find that a little more intuitive and easier to use than rather counting the number of cases I'm going to have. I can choose how early people can go in. Maybe I want people in half an hour early. Yes, I will talk about that in just a second if you don't mind. I could provide a description, but otherwise, no. So you can create a session or use a course room. Normally, in most cases, I recommend just using the course room for a number of reasons. It's worth noting, once you get in them, they basically are the same thing. Course room, session, this right here, you wouldn't really be able to tell once you're in the room, whether it's a course room or session, they function the same way. But there is a couple advantages, I think, to the course room. And for one thing, it's important to generally use one, not both. If you're going to use sessions, lock the course room. If you're going to use the course room, don't create sessions, because otherwise you can have some students going in one and some students going in the other. The reason I recommend the course room is a lot of people will use it for, say, teaching, and then for office hours, and maybe office hours for you, and maybe office hours for a TA. It might be everyone's needs it. And then maybe a student emails you on the fly saying, can I please meet with you right now? I can't make office hours, I'm working at the time, please can I meet? Well, if I'm using a session, I have to make a session specifically for that. I'm gonna get a bunch of students emailing me, what's that session about? Should I be in there? Whereas the course room, everyone knows I just go there. Whether it's teaching, whether it's office hours, whether it's a one-on-one meeting, it makes it more easy and simple. A little redundant there, but it makes it simple because you just go to the same place. Also, if I load a file to the course room, and I'll show you how to do that later, if I load a file today, it's still there tomorrow. It's still there a month from now. So if I taught something in the first week and then a student's asking me about it, I can just pull that file back up. I can go in today and preload all my content. As a session, I have to load the files for each session when I go in. And as you saw, I can only go up to up to an hour early. So I think it's easier to go in and just use a course room. I will show you how you can make a private office hours. That's probably going to be much later on though. Now, if you need more than one room at once, maybe two people are having office hours at once and they each want their own private room to do that in, that's when you might have a session. Maybe you have two tutorials going on at the same time. You might want to use sessions for that to actually organize that. But otherwise, again, I often recommend the course. We'll talk about one more use case in a second, but first I want to look at some settings, including that dial-in one. So when I click into the course room, the default page is the event details page, but there's also this little sprockety symbol to go into the session settings. Let's look at the settings. The default role generally is good enough. You can choose to allow students to download recordings. By default, they can't. Most people don't allow that, but you could. You can anonymize the chat in the recording. So in the live session, the chat is not anonymous, but in the recording, it would be. Whether you want people to show a profile picture, I mean, that's just a matter of preference. These settings here are the important ones. So by default, you probably want people to use audio, video, and post chat messages to be able to communicate. This is one you might want to consider toggling off. These are the default settings normally. I normally recommend people turn this off. You saw we did an activity at the beginning where you did draw on the whiteboard, and I like that activity. But maybe if I'm going to be sharing PowerPoint throughout an entire course, I might not want students to be able to draw on that at any time. Later on, in the room, I can override these permissions live, but by default, maybe I don't want my students drawing on files while I'm trying to present. Also, I'd recommend turning off this attendees to join using a telephone. As I said, it's mobile friendly. They can connect on their phone. This is a dial-in option, which seems great. They dial in to use audio. Problem is, as it says up here, this is a long distance number. It's actually a West Virginia area code, so some of your students will get a long distance bill. I warned them about that in the tutorial, but some students will miss it, so I do just turning this option off. We're looking at getting a non-long distance number, but at the moment it is. Okay, private chat. This is another matter of preference. Do I want people privately messaging each other? It's personal preference. Do I want to monitor those chats? If they are, again, personal preference. If the default room will fit up to 250 people. If you need a session larger than that, unfortunately, you have to do a large scale session, which does limit the options. Within a large session, things like breakout rooms don't work. Students don't have the option to use audio, video, or draw on whiteboards. The only thing they have is chat, and even that's enabled or disabled initially until you go in the room. So if you're ever going to need more than 250 people in a room, counting presenters, you might want to reach out and get some specific advice for that. And there is a profanity filter if you want it as well. Another reason I like the course room, okay, I've updated things, I saved that today, I forget about it, I never have to update these settings again. Whereas if I create a session and I'm creating multiple sessions, I have to remember to do those settings every time. One last thing to look at before we go in is this guest access. This is something I can enable or not. Sometimes you might want to have a guest speaker come in Someone who's not associated with their Blackboard site, you want to invite them in. You today were given a guest link. As you saw, it's anonymous entry though. You entered your own name. So generally not what you would want to share with your students. Your students and you will join by clicking the course room, join course room button. It'll recognize their name, recognize their role in the course, and give them appropriate permissions. If you need to invite someone outside of the Blackboard site, this is how you could do it. Copy this link, send them it in an email, and they can join. There are some groups who have done large events as well. Things like near the end of the semester, maybe I want my students to present to a wider audience, a public audience. They can invite their friends and family members. In that case, some of them have shared the guest link out. You gotta be careful though. You may have heard of the idea of Zoom bombing, or in our case, collab bombing, where inappropriate people get a hold of this link, they join the session and are doing inappropriate things. Later, I'll show you how to shut that down, but you gotta be a little careful. The course room, this guest link doesn't change. If you share the guest link at the beginning of the term, it never changes all term. You can try and disable it, but if you need to invite other people, it's going to give you problems. If you're going to have a large public event where you're sharing this link in, say, social media or on a website or just publicly, that's when you might want to create a session specifically for that. Each session has its own unique guest link. So you have a session, the guest link gets out there, inappropriate people are there. Well, at least they're not coming to any other sessions. So that would be a use case where maybe the session is useful, so you can share that guest link. Great. Let's go in. Let's take a look at the room. So I'm going to click Join Course Room. Again, you, the students, you all join the same way. Click Join Course Room. It's going to recognize your name, and it's going to recognize your role and give you the appropriate permissions. It should likely make you a moderator. Now, a lot of people are going to want to test out the room. If you had experience things from both a student and instructor perspective, not necessarily. Sessions, like a course room, multiple people could go in there. So if you're looking for more of a one-on-one session, I'm going to show you a trick with break rooms later. Yeah, that will probably be in quite a bit of time. It's a way you can basically make a waiting room and then have private office hours. And the process is the same whether in a course room or a session. So session is more if you're doing a public event. Oh, that's perfect. Yeah, please, this is great. Asking questions like this is exactly what I'd hope for. So you might want to go in the room more than once so you can really experience things. Problem is, if you click Join Course Room again on there, it's going to say, nope, you're in there. Can't do it again. At least it will in a second. Oh no, already in the session. This is where you can use the guest link. You can do this to add yourself some fake students. And in my case, I'm going to use a guest link, and I'll enter myself as a couple fake students actually, just so I can demonstrate things nicely. It might be that you send this guest link to someone you haven't got to talk to in a while. So this would be a nice way to maybe connect with them and let them be your guinea pig so you can experiment with things at once. Yes, we'll definitely talk about that. The idea of how to do private office hours. And now, hopefully you're going to bear with me one moment. I'm going to mute these just so I don't get echo, and I'll move these off screen. So I'll have a couple fake students that we can use in today's session. Great. Now your space probably looks a little more like this, and I'm going to zoom in so you can see a little more clearly. This is going to zoom in the window I'm in as well, but I should hopefully still be able to monitor chat nicely. So hopefully you can see pretty nicely now. It's worth mentioning, if you look near the top left of the screen I'm sharing, you should see what kind of looks like a magnifying glass over the paper. If you click that, that lets you control the zoom on your own specific end. Doesn't impact anyone else, but let you zoom in on anything that you need to. Okay, so let's say you want to record a session. What you're going to do is click the 3 horizontal lines near the top left of the screen. You have a start recording option. When I click that, a pop-up's going to warn everyone in the room the session's being recorded. And let's say you do take a break at some point, or you're partway in the session and you go, oh no, have I turned on the recording? Happens to all of us. Have I turned it on? Oh no, remember. Well, if you look near the top left, there's this little camera icon with a red dot. and you hover over it, it reassures you the recording is in progress. If I need to stop the recording, same 3 horizontal lines and stop recording. As I said earlier, if you start a recording and stop it and then start another, it's another recording. It didn't pause it, it makes 2 recordings. Most of the other things in here we don't really need to worry about. There's a tutorial and things, but I'm going to give you more detail than that. The report an issue doesn't actually really go anywhere. I do show this to the students in the tutorial, and mainly because I tell them, again, you're not going to actually submit it, but if they're submitting a ticket via that link I gave you earlier, they could copy this information. There's a lot of it, but if they put that in the ticket, it gives me a lot of detail. Whoever's answering a lot of details about the browser they're using, things like that. Of course, not everyone's going to know to do that. Likely the most important thing when you first join the virtual classroom is to make sure your audio and video works. And when you first logged in, it probably prompted you to set up your audio and video. Next time you log in, it probably won't. It'll probably remember those default settings. But let's say you do have trouble. First thing to do, make sure you're in Chrome. Same with your students. Audio problems, are you on Chrome? It'll fix a lot of problems, I can tell you that. But let's say partway through your session, for some audio cuts out, or you're having troubles with it, well, you can go to the purple icon near the bottom right here. This will open up our Collaborate panel. We want to click into the sprocket, the gear-looking one near the far right, and click Set up your camera and microphone. This will prompt you to pick which microphone you want to use if you have more than one. It's very encouraging, and you should see a purple bar rising as you're talking. It even, again, says you sound great. And as long as it's working, I say yes. Otherwise, it will take me to help file. Same with camera. It'll let me pick which one I want to use if I have more than one, and no, it will take me to help file, or yes, it's working. That didn't turn it on, and it warns you that, but it should be working. That being said, it's silly, and hopefully it'll never happen to you. I've seen it once or twice where someone's in the middle of a session, and for some reason the audio stops working. They can no longer hear you. Hopefully it never happens to you, and it's horribly cliche, I know, but if that's the case, it might not hurt to close and reopen. It should hopefully only take a few seconds to close the window and then reopen it by clicking Join Course Room again, but it sometimes will help. Hopefully it doesn't ever happen to you, but it's not the worst. Again, it's cliche, and cliche for a reason because sometimes it helps. Let's say I'm ready to turn on my webcam or mic though. I'm going to click the webcam symbol near the bottom middle, these 4 icons here. One is the webcam. It'll let me preview, make sure I'm okay with turning on my webcam, and click Share. It'll show me in the bottom left. When I'm ready, I can also turn on my mic. And now one of the common things that happens is you're in the room and maybe you're meeting one-on-one with a student and they say they can't hear you. Is it you? Is it them? How can you tell? Well, if you look at the microphone symbol, you should see a white bar rising and falling in it as you talk. If that's the case, you're transmitting. It's something on their end. Are they using Chrome? Can they go to something like YouTube and make sure they actually hear audio? Because maybe it's a system audio issue. So that will at least let you identify is the problem them or you. One thing I'd recommend is when you're using the microphone, you and the student should think of it kind of as a toggle switch or old school walkie-talkie. Turn it on when you're ready to talk, off when not. This will cut down on feedback. It's less likely someone forgets their mic's on, talking to someone else, or has their dog barking and creating a lot of extra noise. So on when ready to talk, off when not. I have seen where maybe someone's internet connection is slow and laggy, and so the internet or the audio is coming out of their speakers, but there's a delay and it's actually being picked up by their inbuilt speakers and it starts to loop and make a horrible noise. Well, the best, most economical solution to that is even use a cheap pair of headphones. And I've literally used dollar store headphones, plug those in so the audio comes out of there and I talk into the inbuilt mic. Especially for students, that's a great solution because again, we don't want to force them to have to buy anything expensive like a headset. You may or may not want a headset depending on if you can get it funded for by the department, but generally a pair of headphones would probably solve most problems. I'm guessing someone may be just experimenting. Couple other buttons. So we've got this one, the 4th one over. If I click into there, you can set yourself as away. So I need to leave for 5 minutes. I set myself as away. Nice thing is it automatically turns off my microphone and webcam in case I forgot. And then when I'm back, it'll turn it back on. Now I'm actually going to turn them off because I don't need them anymore. And we're going to look at more of these buttons in a moment, a little bit later on. You could leave the session if you want here, but otherwise we're going to leave this stuff for a moment. The final one is what I think someone just discovered, is the hand raise feature. Someone had mentioned on the whiteboard that the idea of how to organize a session in an organized manner, keeping things smooth. For me, I love the idea someone has a question and they want to throw in the chat. That's easy. I can respond to it right away. I can keep track. I want them to be feeling they can engage dynamically without having to be too formal. But it might be a lot of people like the hand raise feature, especially for when someone turns on their mic. Just like in class. Well, you raise your hand, maybe I finish the thought I have, and then, yeah, I'll call on you. And the nice thing is, when a student raises their hand, you can see it gives me a notification saying they've raised their hand, and it even puts students in order if more than one has a question. So in this case, Mark, maybe when they're done, they'll lower their hand. If not, I'll lower it for them. And then I see, oh, Mark 2 also had a question. Great. Let's go back over to this gear area and look at some of the other settings. As I said, set up your camera and microphone. You can also control your speaker volume here if you want. You would likely never do what I'm about to do. I'm going to put my volume to 0 simply because I know later I'll turn on a student microphone and don't want an echo. You'd probably never do this. Yes, exactly. You can have the chat. Someone could be typing in the chat. Someone could type in the chat and raise their hand to get your attention to look at the chat if that's what you wanted. Might depend on how you want to run the session. Okay, there's also notifications. You're probably getting a lot of dinging noises and pop-ups depending as people come in the room, as people put in chat messages. That is up to you, what kind of noises you get. This controls it. And this is mostly a matter of personal preference. Do I want a dinging noise when certain things happen? Do I want a pop-up notification when certain things happen? I will note that I use this for office hours, and I actually have purposely turned on a collaborate pop-up, audio pop-up, or audio noise, and a browser pop-up when someone comes in the room. Because if I'm in office hours and no one's there, I might be doing something like checking my email. Well, this will get my attention to let me know someone's coming in the room so I can immediately go help them. But again, otherwise preference on when you will get certain things happening. Session settings is important. And hopefully at least a little familiar looking. The same 4 options I had outside the room. I can control them live during the session. Well, let's say I get collab bombed. Again, hopefully never happens to you, but if I did, I have 20 people in the room doing inappropriate things. This is where I shut them down. Great, 20 people in the room. Hopefully they're going to get bored because they can't do anything, not even chat. Later on, I'll show you how you could promote someone to a presenter. There's a participant role, presenter role, moderator role. So students join as participant, you join as the moderator, and there's an intermediate role for various situations. Hopefully, though, you're not only using this for a negative reason. I mean, ideally, I normally have these 3 enabled, but as you saw at the beginning of today's session, I wanted you to be able to draw on the whiteboard. I'll show you how to do that later, how to enable the whiteboard, but I like that activity. It's anonymous, which I can decide if I tell the students or not, but I don't know who's writing, and it's just a fun way to get quick feedback from the room and see what people say. And someone who might be too shy to put it in the chat because it's still associated with their name, maybe will draw on the whiteboard and let me know something. So a way of getting people engaged. And this is where I can turn it on. So, well, everyone draw on the whiteboard. Now we're going back to the presentation. And I don't really want you drawing on the slides that I'm presenting, so I'm going to turn it back off. You can control it here. Worth mentioning, by the way, that if you're looking at the room we're in and trying to follow along, your options look a little different. You're participants, so you don't have all the same options I do today, but when you go into a room as a moderator, you would. So you didn't have the recording option, you didn't have these session settings, but later you would. Let's jump over to the chat panel. Many of you are already using this, which is great. As I said, in a recorded session, the chat gets recorded and timestamped. One thing you likely don't have is the multiple chat rooms. As a moderator, I have a moderator chat. Right now, that's kind of useless in this room because I'm the only moderator. But if I had a guest speaker, this is a place we could coordinate. Maybe it's somewhere I'm privately messaging them saying, hey, you're doing great, but I need you to speed up. The moderator chat is not recorded, so it's private. Also could be where an instructor and TA could coordinate, or multiple TAs coordinate. Maybe you realize someone's having trouble and you're saying, hey, can you go help so-and-so? So a private place you can actually just talk. The everyone chat is for everyone, as it logically implies. You can say hi. Again, it's recorded, it's timestamped. There's a wealth of emojis, more than I could ever hope to use personally. One thing I do think is really good is that they do let you select the skin tone for the emojis. Beyond that, you can search the emojis, and again, there's more than I could ever possibly use, but you might really enjoy them. Now let's go over to the attendees panel. You can see it looks like it has 2 people and the number of people in the room, in our case 57. Click into there, and there's quite a bit of good information in here actually. It lists who's in the room, and their roles. So I can see 3 people in the room and their various roles. But I can do a variety of things here as well. Firstly, I can look and start seeing somebody's experience. This weird bucket with lines in it talks about someone's experience. This loosely translates to someone's connection. It's not a perfect translation because they add some other things in. What I usually say is if it tells me my experience is excellent, I take that with a grain of salt. However, if it tells me my experience is poor, I believe that, and I know that means someone has a bad connection. So if a student's getting kicked in and out, they're saying they're having trouble hearing you, you might go here and take a look. Oh, your experience is poor. I think your connection is actually weak. Are you logging in on data? Ideally, the best experience you're going to get is if you're connected on Ethernet. Connect Ethernet directly to your modem. That will be your best experience. I have a weaker internet connection than other people, and I get a better experience because I'm connected on Ethernet. Even right now, I'm in 3 collaborating rooms and doing screen sharing, and hopefully it's smooth right now. So Ethernet, if you can, is best. If not, get as close to your modem as possible. And other little silly things you can do, make sure you don't have a ton of other programs open. If you're like me and you normally have 20 tabs open, close those tabs down. It will mean you're using less bandwidth. Also close other programs that you don't need open. That way your computer isn't working harder than it needs to. And right now, most of us are probably at home with other people, maybe a significant other, roommates, kids. Maybe during your live session, you ask if they can go a little bit lighter on the internet. Can you not be streaming Netflix at the same time I'm trying to teach? Hopefully, most of you won't experience any problems with your internet anyway. You won't have to worry about that. But if you do, again, things like Ethernet will help a lot, and getting other people to maybe, again, prioritize who's using the internet at a certain time. Now, it's unfortunate I actually have a good experience, which sounds silly, but normally if your experience is anything other than excellent, it'll also have other information beyond the bit rate. It'll have loss, so audio or video loss as a percentage. So you're losing 5% of the audio, well, that's pretty significant. Also to have a delay. If you're delayed by a second, again, that might account for why someone might interrupt someone else by accident because they think the person's done talking and the other person already started talking. But what else can I do? Well, in here, on the 3 dots to the right of the person's name, I have a variety of options. I could send them a private chat message. So just to Mark, great. You have to be a little careful. You don't want to accidentally post in the wrong chat when you're trying to. Also want to miss messages. You can see I had this pop-up come up because of my notification settings to let me know someone has posted a message. I also see a red dot up here. The name at the top tells me what chat room I'm in. If I click the arrow, it goes out to the list of general chat areas. So you want to be a little careful. I can see there's a new chat message here. You just want to make sure you're always posting in the right chat if you're doing a lot of private chat messaging. What else can I do? I can promote people. I can make someone a moderator or a presenter. If I had a guest speaker, or if for some reason TA didn't have the permissions they needed, you could have someone promote them. You could promote each other. Nice thing is if I accidentally make someone a moderator, I always have the option as the original moderator to demote them back down. Because normally if I want students to do a presentation or have a little more options, I make them a presenter, not a moderator. A moderator has the option to kick people, has the option to mute people. Probably don't want to give that to every student. Now, as we said, if we got Zoom bombed, or in our case, collab bombed, I could make sure that participants can't do anything. Well, I probably still want my students, the ones who are actually legit students, to be able to do things. So what I could do is promote them to presenter. They still have the option to use audio, video, chat, have the option to share files. Presenters have more permission. They can share files, they can share their screen, they can do an actual presentation. So if you have students that need to present, you likely just want to make them a presenter. You also might see the Make Captioner button. This sounds great. Unfortunately, it's a little more limited than you might think. This is if you had a very set script and then someone was typing out that script as you went. Unfortunately, the virtual classroom does not have automatic captions. If I needed to, I could remove someone. I could kick someone from a session. It's not a permanent kick, though. That's important to know. I kick someone. If they try to refresh the page, it doesn't let them back in. If they're smart and shut things down and rejoin, they can get back in. So even if I get collab bombed, kicking them isn't going to be enough because they can get back in if they're smart. Great. Well, we looked at the idea of a student says they can't hear me. Well, we know how to solve the problem by looking at the microphone. What if a student says they've turned on their mic and you can't hear them? How do you know if it's you? How do you know if it's them? Let's take a look. When they turn on their microphone, it should show up beside their name. I should see a microphone symbol. If I see a microphone symbol, at least I know the microphone's recognized. If a student ever says that their microphone and camera are grayed out, likely it means they don't have one. Might mean they blocked it, but it likely means they don't have one. I have had a few students who are using desktop computers and assumed they had a mic, and no, they don't. So if it's grayed out, likely means they don't have one or they've blocked it, which we'll talk about in a sec. But great, I can tell if it's on or not, but I should also see the black bar rising and falling. If that's the case, they're transmitting. If I can't hear them, it's nothing on my end. Am I on Chrome? I should probably double check my speakers. Again, maybe go to YouTube and see if I can actually hear any sound. And then, yeah. So that tells me if it's me or them. Now, as I said, people should think of it as a toggle switch, but someone will forget eventually. And now you're hearing their dog barking in the background. If I click the three dots, I now have the option to mute them. It's not a permanent mute, but it should hopefully solve the problem. Now, of course, if you have, say, 20 people in the room and you get a horrible echoing noise, you probably don't want to have to search through and find every single person to mute them. If you click the three dots near the top right, you can mute all at once. There's also the option to detach panel. This is less exciting than you might think. It moves it aside. It doesn't let you actually move it around. I mean, I do find it useful because now I have a list of attendees and the chat open at once. In this case, I want more real estate though, so I'm going to close it back down by merging. Now, one of the other common issues that occurs is when you first joined today, you probably were asked to allow or block your microphone and camera. Without thinking, a lot of people click block because I don't want somebody accessing it and oh no, now what? Well, if you're on Chrome, if you look to the left of your address bar, the part where it says ca.bbcolab.com, in case someone doesn't know what the address bar is, which might happen. If you look, there's a tiny lock symbol to the left of that. If you click that, it'll open up a window where you can override and re-allow permission to your microphone and camera. So quick, easy fix. And worth mentioning, this works on other sites too, if you ever need this. So quick way of fixing the issue if someone accidentally blocks it. Finally, the last thing in this attendees panel, remember that other fourth button we had? Well, when I click into there, there's the feedback options. In a way, this is a way of reproducing a lot of the nonverbal cues we might get from students. So in the class, I mean, when you're teaching, you might look around and see a bunch of confused faces and you probably go, okay, everyone's clearly confused. Maybe I'm going to reteach this concept. Well, you can't really see that in the online realm. Potentially, you might see a couple of students. If you have students on the screen only, you're not sharing something, you can see up to 4 students at once, up to 4 people on the screen at once. It will prioritize the people who are talking at any given time or have recently talked, but still, you might be not seeing a lot of students as a result. Well, this is a way of getting an informal feedback from them. Not everyone uses it, but some do. So again, a student could indicate they're confused, and I'll get one of my student users to do that too. And you can see it shows up on the panel. I get to see which student is confused, and it tallies along the top for me. And the nice thing is, it runs down after about 20 seconds or so. So students not going to indicate they're confused at the beginning of the lecture and stay that way the whole time. And also there's things like faster and slower, so maybe I know, oh, I'm going too fast or too slow. I do also find the agree, disagree useful. This could be a quick informal read of the room. Okay, we're back. Everyone ready to continue on? Is that clear and everyone agree we can move on? Give me a quick agree, disagree. Great. I can see some people are using it right now, which is nice. And it's up to you, but it can be a nice informal way to get some feedback from students. It's not recorded in a formal way or anything, but again, it lets you get some nonverbal cues. Finally, let's look at the one with a box with an arrow in it, the share content area, where a lot of the power of the virtual classroom is located. First things first, we have the blank whiteboard. So I clicked into that, and you can see this is basically what we had at this beginning of today. I actually had a slide, a very blank slide I had made with that question on it, but the same idea applies. I could very quickly type out, what do you need to learn? And have it on the slide. I could use the arrow to move it around, to resize it. I could even rotate it if I really wanted to. The finger shows on the screen and people see that. So maybe I really want everyone looking at the U word. I can draw with the pencil. And it does try and smooth it out for me, which I appreciate. But if I'm going to be doing a lot of drawing on the whiteboard, I probably don't want to do that with a mouse. If I have an iPad or a tablet, that's nice, or a writing pad. Writing pad is a much more economical way of doing it, and that would let you write on the whiteboard. There's a variety of shapes, so I could do a circle. I could change the color of all this if I want to. So maybe when I go back to typing, great. And one option I have that you didn't is the eraser. Even when I turn on the your ability to draw on the whiteboard, you don't have the eraser. And that's a good thing because the whiteboard's not permanent. They were meant to fix that this summer, but they haven't. So whiteboard is not permanent, meaning I erase it, it's gone forever. I have amazing drawing I've made or amazing work. I've worked out how to solve a problem. I might want to do a screen capture to save that for later because it's not permanent, unfortunately. Anytime I want to stop doing something in the virtual classroom, I should have a circle with a square in it. That's our stop button, so stop sharing. I'm going to skip down to share camera for a second. And that might seem a little redundant. We already have the webcam symbol here, so what's this? Share camera would mean it will display for sure in the main area. And in fact, actually, before I get that, let's show you what I mean. I have my whiteboard up, I turn on my webcam, you can see I am shown in the bottom corner. I see myself in the bottom left, students will see me in the bottom right. Now, what is recorded is what's shared in the main screen. When you watch this recording, you won't see me on webcam. You will see the screen I'm sharing. If I stop screen sharing, then you would see the webcam. Now, the student, if they ever need to, maybe they need to toggle between the whiteboard and the presenter, especially maybe someone needs to be able to lip read. I found it useful to tell people, hey, look, you can click my picture and that's what will show up big. It lets you toggle between the two. So whoever's talking should show up in the bottom. Great point, or great note. Great. So what is the point of the camera? Well, the camera actually would let you pull a second camera if you want. And it also just forces it to show in the main screen, which, I mean, if I stop sharing, would show on the main screen anyway. But it can, if you had more than one camera, it'd let you pick which one to use. And you could have this shared at the same time as your webcam down here. In this case, a little redundant because same camera, but if I had two cameras, I could use that to show two cameras at once. And I'm gonna stop this because it's throwing me off a little. But if you had two cameras, there is some cases where I've talked to some instructors who thought this was useful, potentially, because maybe you need to demonstrate something. I've got a couple instructors who wanted to be able to show artifacts, specific artifact, and they want to be able to leave it up for students to kind of examine on their own. Well, by doing that, I can have two camera streams, and as we saw, I can flip back and forth, or the student can, between them, and see it from two different angles. Same with like a physical demonstration. Maybe you're trying to demonstrate the motion of an arm or muscle. Well, being able to see it from multiple angles might be useful. Yeah, and it is a different mirroring depending, as you might have seen. So that's why I looked slightly different in one camera. Share files. This lets me pull in a PowerPoint, PDF, or image file, but it makes those all into images. So what do I mean? Let's say I have a PowerPoint with a lot of great animations that really help engage the content and make it go step by step. those would all break. It takes my PowerPoint and makes an image file out of each slide. If you need those animations, I'll show you another way of sharing in a sec, but it's worth noting that this is less bandwidth. If you have bandwidth issues, this might be a good way of sharing files. Because I can come in and pull in a PowerPoint, PDF, or image. I can either click and find that file or drag it in and drop it. And again, if I'm in the course room, I can do that today. It's still there a month from now. So if I've, say, brought in a PowerPoint, if you're like me, you might sit here double clicking, wondering why won't it open? You have to make sure it's highlighted, and then I'll click Share Now. I get to preview it along the side first, and when I'm ready, I can click into any slide I want, say the first one. I could keep navigating along the side here, but more likely it's more useful to click the arrows along the bottom. I'll talk about the video links in a second if you don't mind. I mean, most likely if you have a video link, you're going to want to share that in the chat. So kind of something I guess, well, that's we'll talk about it a little more when we do screen share as to why that's a better approach. But so the nice thing is when I pull in the file here, again, I can navigate with the arrows along the bottom. I can also have the chat open at the same time, and I can still use all these drawing tools. So everyone keep in mind this point right here. This is the important point. Just like before, these annotations are not permanent though. So if I go to the one slide and then back, it's gone forever. But it would have been recorded, the annotations I've made. So it can be a nice low bandwidth way of running a presentation. It's all organized, chats here, and it can work nicely. Again though, PowerPoint, PDF, image file only, and makes them into an image. As always, circle with a square to stop. Let's say I want to share something that's not a PowerPoint, PDF, or image. Or maybe I want a PowerPoint with animations. Well, I can also do the Share Application /Screen. When I click into there, it'll let me pick which screen I want to share if I have more than one, which can be useful. And just to show you, the first time you share your screen, it's going to throw you off. Because what will happen is you'll get this awful looking picture in picture in picture. And a lot of people think, oh no, I've broken the system. This is actually a good sign. This is a good sign because I'm showing the screen that shows the screen that shows the screen. It's basically like a bunch of mirrors reflecting off each other. As soon as I tab this down, whatever I pull up, that's what my students see. And that's what I've been doing this whole time. I've been sharing my screen. That's why when I was on a Blackboard site, that's what you saw. When I go to the virtual classroom, that's what you saw. If I want to pull up software and demonstrate it, that's what you'd see. That being said, it's more bandwidth intensive. So if your PowerPoints are simple without animations anyway, you probably want to just load the file. Also, you saw the chat. Well, as you might have seen, when I do that, the chat is going to be minimized. So I'm going to either have to listen to noise or have the chat open on another screen like I'm doing. That's why I can monitor chat and share a screen at the same time because I have two screens. What some people do is they log in on two devices. Someone might have the chat open on their phone, the laptops for presenting, phones for monitoring chat. It helps kind of differentiate the two. But let's look at the other options in the share screen. You can do the entire screen, a specific application window, or a specific tab. You can see I'm preaching, do what I say, not what I do. I do have more tabs open than I should, but I could choose a specific tab to share. And when I'm doing the screen or tab, I have the option in the bottom left there to share audio. This would be my system audio. So if I needed to play an audio track from my computer, I could. Which brings us back to that video link question. If you're going to be sharing videos during a live presentation, if it's something like a YouTube video, you're better off putting the link in the chat. As you saw, it becomes a clickable link. You can use the share audio and share your screen and show a YouTube video, but if your connection is weak or the student's connection is weak, the experience is going to suffer. Some of your students with a bad connection won't see the video well. Whereas if you put the link in the chat and say, let's take a quick break, everyone go watch it, they get to choose a quality that best suits their need. They also have the video for later if they want to reference it again. So if you just want them to watch the video, you might as well put the link in the chat, have them all watch it, then come back. If you need to be able to talk through the video, or if it's a video only available on your computer, then you might not have a choice. You might have to use the share screen and share audio and hope it works well. But if you can get away with just giving them a link, you're so much better off. And what I'd normally recommend is have a Word file with those links and any of the other hyperlinks you need that you can copy and paste and put in the chat to make your life easy. Great. So that's really everything to do with application sharing. Yes, when I record this session and when you get this recording, you're going to see this entire chat was included. And you can open up the chat and go in and click a link. So if I put the links I put in the beginning and if I put any more in later, those will be available in the chat as well. So another, I think, benefit of just giving the link because, hey, okay, you missed today's session and you're following up and trying to watch it. Well, you can go watch that video. Okay, there's also a polling feature built into the virtual classroom. Now, maybe don't get your hopes up too much. There's some nice features of it, but if I click a polling, and great, I have a multiple choice or yes, no poll. Okay, the problem is when I click in, I have to actually type out the whole question and answer myself. And I can't do this in advance, unfortunately. So, a couple workarounds. Well, again, maybe I have a Word file where you can copy and paste the question and the answers. That's one workaround. Another is maybe if I know the question in advance, I'm just going to have a slide that has the question and answers numbered 1, 2, 3, or 4, however many I have, so the students can just read the question and answer it. But let's look at how it would show up in that case. So I'm not actually putting the question, not putting the answers. This is what I see as the instructor, but good old student me is seeing this. And you can see, by the way, this is a message they get when I muted them. It's not a permanent mute. They could turn it back on, but they were warned they were muted. And now the student can go in and respond. That student doesn't see what the responses are until you make them available. And they don't know who responded how. I do as the instructor in the attendees panel, I can see who's responded and how, but until I click show responses, the students don't see the overall results. Once I've shown the results, if I want to open them back up, I'll hide the responses. I could also have cleared the responses. And let's say I do have that slide open and students need to be able to see the slide to actually read the question. Well, right now the poll is probably blocking their way. What they or I can do on my own end is you can see there's a 5th button now. When they click that, it toggles a poll open and closed. So controls for them, not the entire class. So if a student needs to be able to see that, you can say, click that 5th button. You'll be able to see the slide question now. Once you're ready, click that 5th button again. Now answer, assuming you've made it open to them. One last thing worth noting, you count as a respondee. So if you're sitting there going, oh, why isn't someone answered this? It might be you. So as always, when you're done, circle with square to stop. I do think the yes/no poll is a nice one for on the fly. I mean, that's a little easier. Okay, is everyone back and ready to continue after watching the video? You know, even if someone says no, they're just being clever and you still know they're back. The nice thing about the yes/no versus the agree/disagree is that polls are tracked. You can get a report of the polls when a session is done. And let's jump out for a second and see how you do that. So let's say you finished your session for the day. You'd go to where you had it, whether it was a course room or session, wouldn't really matter, the process is the same, but you'd click the 3 dots to the right of it. And one of the options is view reports. If you did polls in that session, you could download the polls. I click that, I'm gonna get a CSV file I can open in Excel and see the polls. It'll give me who answered, how they answered, what the question was, and what the answers are. Of course, if I didn't actually have the question typed out, the poll question is very boring. It's blank. And the answers, you can see, well, in this case, no one really actually answered it. There's also a timestamp. So if you're going to track this, you might actually want to type out the questions to make your life easier. Even that, the problem is you can't import this to the grade center directly. You'd have to take this file, play around with it, get it into a good format to import to the grade center. So it's up to you how you may or may not want to use that. But you can get the report at least. Also worth noting, you can get an attendance report. So you click view report under attendance, you can get an idea of who was in the room, how long they were there for, how many times they joined, and this is also exportable to CSV. This was not a very diverse group, but at least I can go in and see who was there. Great. The final feature we want to look at is the idea of breakout groups. And there's quite a few use cases for this, quite a few things you might want to do. Firstly, let's click in. And actually, before I do that, I almost forgot. I'm going to add a couple more fake students, and maybe I'll do that on a different screen just so it's not disruptive. Because it's a lot easier to demonstrate breakout rooms with more people. Great, so a lot of marks, at least the cute kitten picture. All right, when I click into breakout groups, there's a couple ways I can do this. Ooh, no, unfortunately, there's no way to get a record of who watched it. You can't really tell who watched the recording, unfortunately. I mean, you might be able to do a course report and see who clicked into the recordings area, but it wouldn't be granular enough to show you did they actually watch it, unfortunately. Okay, so when I start breakout rooms, this is an area where I'd send students off into smaller rooms to do, say, think, pair, share, work in small groups, and then come back to the main room to collaborate. Well, what I can do is make a random assignment. Random assignment where I just randomly distribute the students into rooms. When they go into those rooms, they will have the role, well, they have the permissions of a presenter. So they have the full option to use audio, video, chat, be able to share files, share their screens, so they really can collaborate. What happens in the breakout rooms is not recorded, though. You do not have the breakout rooms recorded. When I am doing the random assignment, I can include myself or moderators in that. Normally I wouldn't because I want to make sure it's evenly distributed with students. I get to choose the number of groups. There has to be at least 2 students per group though. That's why right now my option is 2. I have 4 fake students in a room. If I had 10, I could have up to 5 or as little as 2. They want you to have at least 2 students in a group because, well, obviously that's an actual collaborative experience as compared to just 1. You'd have to use a custom assignment for 1, which we'll talk about later. We're going to skip the attendee switching groups for now. And when I look at my groups, let's say I realize Mark and Mark 2 probably shouldn't be working together. If I want to, I can click the shuffle button to redistribute. But when I'm ready, I'm going to click start. And the students are sent into small rooms that are not recorded, but where they are able to collaborate together. If I want to go visit those students, I'd go to the attendees panel. And what I do is I can see the groups, who's in them, and I have a green arrow pointing out what almost looks like a door beside each group. And in essence, that's kind of what it is. I want to join and see what they're doing. I click that. And now, as soon as I enter the group, I'll be able to see and hear what they're doing. I can't otherwise. Students get a pop-up saying I'm joining the room. And now I can talk to them and see what's going on. Worth noting that each breakout group has their own chat. Their own chat you can see for group 1. They don't see each other's chat. You don't see the chat unless you're in there with them. If a student needs to get a hold of you while they're in the breakout groups, you might want to just tell them, click out and go to the everyone chat. They message you, oh, can you come to group 1 to come help us? You can also use the everyone chat to give them messages like, oh, 5 more minutes till we come back. First time you do that, students might not notice it, but after a while, especially if you're emphasizing, oh, check the everyone chat for updates, they will hopefully notice. As always, when you're done, you're going to click a circle with the square. In this case, it's back where the breakout rooms are, or breakout groups. Click that. It brings everyone back to the main room. That's a random assignment. But you might have a case where you want to have the same groups each week. Or maybe you want students, you have a seminar course where students should pick their own topics. Both could be completed in the same way. I click breakout groups. I'm going to do a custom assignment in this case. And what I'd want to do is allow attendees to switch groups. Because if I want to, I can create as many groups as I want. By clicking the plus symbol, I can even go in and rename the groups. Maybe I realize that, again, it's a seminar topic, so I want them to pick the topic they're interested in. I put the topic names, let's say. Well, I could manually move students by grabbing their name and dragging them to rooms I know they should be in. As soon as you're even up to a dozen students, though, that's not practical. You're going to lose a lot of time. Students are going to get distracted. So instead, I'm going to start the room with no one moved yet. And if this is a group project, let's say, or I want the same groups each week, presumably I'll have to let the students know in some way what group they are. Maybe I've made groups in Blackboard, and it's the end of the session. I want you to go into your groups to work on your projects. Well, they would know I'm part of group 1. So you tell them, go to the attendees panel. You see where there's a picture of 2 people and the number 5? Click into there. Now scroll down and you should see your group number or the topic you're interested in, depending on the case. There should be a green arrow pointing at a door beside that. Click that to join the group you should be a member of. So they move themselves. First time you do this, there'll be a couple students who will get a little confused, but after the first time, I find people get a hang of this pretty quick. As always, circle with square stop. Final use case is, let's say you want to have private office hours. Because you can have office hours in the virtual classroom. And the main room, you can all meet in there, and if it's nothing private, you can talk to multiple students at once. Great. Pull up the whiteboard to draw things out, maybe share your screen if you need to show them something, or let them share their screen, but maybe a student needs to meet with you privately. Well, the trick I usually recommend is I would make a waiting room of sorts. So I would have a file, I'd make up a PowerPoint with some kind of messaging that works for me, something maybe along the lines of this right here, saying a welcome and giving them some expectations. Maybe you say when the office hours are. The reason I get them to say hi in the chat is because maybe I'm in a room right now meeting privately with a student. 3 students all join at once. If I'm not paying attention, who am I going to meet with first? How do I know? If they say hi in the chat, I can look and see, they at least ordered themselves. Maybe the students weren't quite in order because the one was quicker to say hi in chat, but at least it gives me an idea of who to meet with first. Maybe you get them to say what it is they want to talk to you about if you want as well. So I've got this in my waiting room now. And what I do is go back out to breakout groups. I would create as many breakout rooms as I want. In this case, I want to do a custom assignment, and I definitely don't want people being able to switch groups because I don't want someone coming into a private room. And I'll make as many groups. I probably only need one if it's me. If it's me and another TA or something like that, we could each have our own private breakout group. And then Mark has told me he wants to meet with me. I'll grab Mark, drag him into group 1. I'll move myself into group 1 as well, Mark Lubrick, the instructor in this case. And when I'm ready, I click start. Now me and Mark are in that room meeting privately. No one else can overhear it. No one else knows what's going on. And the other students, as they join, are coming into this main room where they have this waiting room waiting for them with a message. Depending on how good I am, I might also be able to go out to the everyone chat as they come in and say, hi, just give me a minute. But this gives me an option to have a private office hours with just the student. Great. What about, okay, I'm done meeting with Mark. Well, maybe the students who want to meet with me now just want to meet in the main room. In the attendees panel, I'd move myself back to the main room. But maybe another person's told me they want to meet with me privately. Okay. Yes, exactly. The waiting room is the main room. We're basically using kind of a trick here. But I've used it, and I do think it works quite effectively. If there's 2 of you with your own breakout rooms, you have to be a little careful that one of you doesn't accidentally close the breakout rooms for everybody. But I do like this approach. Great. So I'm done meeting with Mark. I go back into breakout groups. Now, presumably, if Mark's done meeting with me, he might just leave the room. If not, I'll drag him back to the main room. And now I've been told Mark 2 also wants to meet with me privately. Okay, grab Mark 2, move him to group 1 with me, click update. I've swapped out who I'm meeting with, still have a private area to meet. To create the breakout rooms, well, let's say I was done doing breakout rooms. The way I started this entire process, I guess my internet's not liking me being in 6 rooms at once. Well, great. So I go to share content, breakout groups, and in my case for the private rooms, I made custom assignment and I can click the plus symbol to make as many rooms as I want, or the garbage can to get rid of a room. Garbage can to get rid of the room. There we go. And when I'm ready, I click start and the rooms are there. That's generally everything about the virtual classroom, though I will, again, I did want to show the captioning, and I think one other feature that might be useful for some people is you may be taking advantage of the groups tool in Blackboard. You might be using that for like a group project. The exact details of that is a little bit beyond this session, but what you might do is make, under users and groups, you can create a set of groups and assign students to them. Ooh, you got to make sure edit mode is on. And what I can do is create a group set. So multiple groups. And if I want, I could do a random enrollment. So randomly splitting my students into a bunch of groups for, say, group projects. Great. Well, I could call them whatever I want. So might be group project. And then as it makes the groups, it'll just number them 1, 2, 3, 4, however many there is, which again would be nice. It would fit in well with the assignments I would do for the breakout rooms when I do custom assignment. And one of the tools I have is allowing that group to have their own Blackboard Collaborate Ultra room, virtual classroom. So each group can have their own virtual classroom. I can even let the students record when they're in that virtual classroom if they want. That would be just to that specific group. So if I had a group project and I want to give students an option of how to meet, this might be a nice thing. I would generally not encourage you to force students to meet in there. A lot of your students might prefer to meet in something else like WhatsApp or Facebook groups or something like that, but this gives them an option if they need it. Also, in terms of captioning, I'll show that real quick. So if you needed to caption a video, you'd want to say log into Stream. Through Office 365, we should all have access to this. If you go to your email in Office 365 and click the 3 or the 9 dots to the top left, Stream should hopefully be an option. If not, click out to Office 365, it'll list all of them. So this would take you to Stream. Well, if I had a recording that I wanted to get captions for, I'd go into the recordings tab, and I might actually kick out a couple of those fake students just to let my bandwidth go down a little bit. So I have this recording. I want to get a caption for it. Great. I'll download it. As an instructor or TA, I should always have the option to download it. Not as sure if every TA will, depending on your role, but now I will take this and I'm going to create in the stream. I'm going to click Create, Upload Video. Drag that video in. Drag that video in. There we go. I can name it whatever I want. I want to make sure the language is appropriate. Permissions, I could choose who gets to see it. In my case, I don't want the entire company, the entire university seeing it. Yes, I'm sure. And what I want to do is under Options, I'm going to turn on Auto-Generate Captions. When I'm done, yours would probably take a lot longer to upload. Mine was a very small file, so I can publish it. It will take some time for your video to show up, and then a little bit of time for the captions to show up. So it might be you walk away and have dinner. Once the captions are ready, you'd go to My Content, Videos. And in my case, I'm going to go to a different video because that one's still uploading. But let's say I knew this is the video I needed the captions from. I'd click into it. I would scroll down, click the 3 dots, and oh no, now I'm hearing myself. Yeah, 3 dots, and I want to do Update Video Details. And what there is a caption file I can download. You get a so-called VTT file. It doesn't really matter the format. What I do is go back to my Collaborate recording. Once it was done, click the 3 dots again, add a caption source, and take that file I just got. Of course, I could also just share the video from Stream if I already have it uploaded there, but take that file, and it would add the captions to that video file. Now, I am going to grab one last thing. They do have a feedback form. I'm happy to stick around, of course, and answer questions people have. But before people get going, there is a feedback form. Appreciate if you were able to fill that out. Always looking for ways to improve this kind of session. So otherwise, that's everything I can think of to cover with the virtual classroom and a few other side topics along the way. But hopefully, again, if you have a moment, maybe go through this form. And again, that way I have an idea of what to do better next time. Hopefully this helped. Oh, Well, thanks. Thanks for coming out. Again, happy to stick around and answer questions too. I might turn off the recording just so there's not too much dead time at the end, but doesn't mean we're done necessarily.